Hi, everybody. Welcome back for our second Get the Word Out episode of the day. Tim Peck, what are you doing to me? We have interviewed 3 Indiana State Democrat Party chair candidates, but there's one more, and we are meeting him today, Derek Camp. This is so important. Who Indiana elects as chair of our Democratic Party is so important for reorganizing, for gaining people, for getting more Dems on the ballot. It's just like incredibly important, and those of us involved are very stressed out about it, and I am one of those people. So I'm going to introduce Tim Peck. Take it from here, and then let's get to know Derek Camp.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. So Tim Peck, I am one of the co-founders here with Sarah at Project Next. At Project Next, we are removing ourselves from the fear and hate of the mainstream media and trying to bring people together, get all sorts of views, and get down to what we're all trying to do, which is try to represent Hoosiers, represent people throughout America, and not just talk about our politicians and the people who are trying to divide us. So we are looking today at the state chair position. We had a forum last week with 3 of the state chair people running for state chair in the Democratic Party. Derek couldn't join us at that time at no fault of his own. And so coming on today to tell us about himself and ask some, and we'll ask some hard questions of him and get his opinion. So Derek, you're chair of Allen County for 24 hours more, is that right? And then
a little less.
And then Wayne Township assessor, candidate for state chair, and so much more. So please introduce yourself. But first, just tell us, what does a day of the life of Derek Camp look like? What did you do today?
Well, thank you. Sorry I couldn't make it last week. I was at the Excellence in Labor Awards with our brothers and sisters in organized labor last week for that forum. I'm excited to be here. I heard that went well. This is a growing thing. My life in the day of me today, I was looking at realtor.com for my job, looking at house listings, seeing what's happening, and then giving blood. And now here.
Giving blood.
So that's a pretty typical day. I look at houses every day for work.
Yes.
The well-liked assessor's office.
Yeah. How did you get into that, being the assessor?
Most everyone falls into that role. So my predecessor, Bev Zuber, her chief deputy, had turned in his notice. He was moving down to southern Indiana. I think he might have moved to New Albany. And so she called looking for some additional help. We had some conversation. She's talking about people that looking for someone that has Excel skills in their 30s, things like that. And it just kind of all lined it up. And so I started. And then when she retired, I ran in the caucus to replace her.
Very nice. All right. And then politics. I mean, how'd you get in politics? Was it when you were a kid you got interested in this, or as a college age student, or when did you decide to throw your hat in the ring and be a leader in our state?
So I first got involved in politics my senior year of high school. I was volunteering for Barack Obama's campaign in the primary and then general election, just doing voter registration efforts. I was posted outside of a Scott's grocery store, collecting voter registrations. After that, I went to Purdue, switched out of engineering like most people do at Purdue, and ended up getting a degree with history and political science. Intern for a congressional campaign up here, Dr. Tom Hayhurst. If you're familiar with him, Dr. Peck.
Yep.
And then from there, I was an intern at the state Senate for Senators Earlene Rogers out of Gary, and then Richard R. Young from down in southern Indiana. It was a very whiplashy issues we were dealing with between Gary and southern Indiana. After that, I was a manager for Tim Delaney in Indianapolis on his state Senate run, helped out with Christina Hale on her House run that year as well, and kind of went from there. That's where I really got involved. Joined the Indiana Young Democrats, became a district chair for them, and then eventually vice chair and president for 3 years. In that time at Young Dems, we bid for and then hosted the Young Democrats of America National Convention in 2019. Brought in Speaker Pelosi and the presidential campaign, some of the candidates, some of their campaigns, and 1,000 people from across the country. We also doubled the previous 14 years fundraising combined while we were doing all that and growing our organization. After that, or during that, I also ran for state senate myself in Lawrence and Fishers. Came close. We took it from a 60-40 district to 51-49. It was 1,609 votes. I will always remember that as the separation.
Yeah.
And then kind of got back into campaign staffing, working around the state before eventually getting back up to Fort Wayne. I'm from this area, and working for Mayor Henry on his reelection campaign. And then Cindy Henry asking me to become chair in 2021 up here.
Okay. And so thank you for all that story arc. And now you're looking to run for state chair, an unpaid position that has a lot of responsibility and a lot of people trying to tell you what to do one way or another, trying to keep together the party and move forward. Sounds like a lot of fun. What made you decide to do that?
So I believe mightily that we have to start rebuilding. And this is going to be the right time for us to do that for a couple different reasons. One, we've got Trump and JD Vance at the federal level, and they're always going to be saying stuff. We've also got, I can't even keep track of how many crazy Republicans here in Indiana running things now, who are definitely going to be spouting off, saying some buffoonish things that are going to give us some opportunities. But more importantly, I do believe that my background as a candidate, caucus leader, staffer, and a county chair is going to lend itself well to what we need in terms of rebuilding. For me, that means rebuilding locally. If we're going to win, we have to rebuild local. That means elected offices, but also our county parties, making sure they're getting the tools and resources and trainings to support candidates and grow at the local level.
Sure. And Nikki Carr here says it's a paid position. What is the salary for this position?
That I'm not entirely sure.
I thought it was unpaid. I've been saying that wrong then. It is paid?
The state chair is the only one that's paid.
Got it.
Oh.
Yeah. I think the fact that you don't know how much it's pays says a lot there in terms of why you might be doing
personally,
this. Yeah.
I think it's fine that it's paid. It's going to
should
be
be paid.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of work. So it makes it's
full-time
fine.
job.
Yeah, it's going to be a full-time job. Yeah.
Like I'm 35. Look at all this gray. That's a county chair's job.
So it seems like you've had a lot of experience in the Indiana Democratic Party, which is a skill. You already kind of know how it's ran. I'm really interested, since I'm sort of new, but I'm big time immersed in it and finding out some problems. Yeah. I'm really interested in, are people that have been around for a long time, are they interested in change? Because I'm getting some hesitancy behind the scenes with the people running the party, that they want to keep running the party the same, while we're down here in Southern Indiana being completely ignored for the most part by the Indiana Democrats. We're getting some help, but we could be getting more. And it's frustrating to be a Democrat in Southern Indiana and to see them patting themselves on the back like they're doing such a great job, when I want to see, okay, we did as best we could. Here's all the changes we're going to make. Here's the plans for reorganizing. I want to see that stuff. Mm-hmm. I get a little frustrated with the patting on the back, because let's look at reality. Mm-hmm. Over 70% of our state government is ran by extremist Republicans. They might not be extreme, but they're voting that way. And we're getting policies in, for the most part, that hurt us. So, do you want to talk about some of the things you want to change specifically? I know Destiny Wells, who's also a candidate, has really talked a lot about gatekeeping, about changing the handbook, the guidebook, those type of things. Do you have any plans if you become chair?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, as I talk with county chairs around the state, is putting in place a county party program. The county parties are at the most basic level where people enter the party. It's their local community. It's the things they care about the most. Everything that happens at a local level impacts you on a daily basis. Yes, Indianapolis and DC have major impacts, but the day-to-day is your city council, your county council, your mayor, your county government. And so making sure that we're getting people in at that level is important. So this county party program is going to include a few things. It's going to be sitting down with the county parties, working through the districts to make sure that we're setting up goals. Each county is setting their goals for the next 4 and 8 years, looking long term. It took us many years to get to the place we are, and it's going to take us many years to get out of that place as well. So it is going to be some patience. With that, there are some simple things that a lot of the county parties are asking for, and that is simply a resource library of templates, of call to caucus, appointment forms, things like that. These sound like small things, but these are things that the counties are asking for and need, because we're wasting time trying to figure out, well, do you have that document? Do you have that document? Can we share this? Let's get it all in one place. We have the documents. Let's do that. One other thing is a speakers bureau. How many small counties have the connections to bring in state senators, legislators, mayors from other parts of the state to come speak at their regular meetings or their fundraising dinner? This is something that we do want to put in place. It is something that counties are asking for, but more importantly, I know there are candidates and elected officials asking for it as well, so that they can start building their network, getting on platforms like this, but also in front of the party business as well. With that said, we're also going to have to change a little bit how we raise money. It is going to take a lot of money to get out of the wilderness. It's going to take a lot of money to fund the party, and it is going to fall largely on the chair, yes, but that doesn't mean that we can't accept help as well. There are former chairs and congressional candidates who are already committing to join an advisory board to help raise money for the party from their own networks, so that we are bringing in more resources to support our party efforts. As we look at everything, I think it's important to look at the view that I come from as a county chair and as a former candidate. I tell my candidates up here, it's your job to go find voters. It's your job to go persuade them and identify them. It's the party's job to run the GOTV program. We're there to cover that expenses. And that's what we do up here in Allen County. We took our GOTV program from $2,000 to $35,000. We're taking care of the absentee chase program. We're taking care of the early voting program. We're taking care of the day of efforts. I don't charge the candidates financially for that, but I do ask that they provide bodies to that program, and then we manage that.
Yeah, those all sound like good ideas. I'm going to jump into a couple hard questions just because I want to make sure we get them in this hour that we have you.
Yeah.
Are you aware of Corinne Straight? She's one of our co-hosts on Project Next.
Yes, I did.
She also has she has about 95,000 followers between TikTok and Instagram, and she just keeps growing. She's a very good communicator, and we're really proud to have her on our team. She recently decided she wanted to try to run for Elkhart County Chair of the Democratic Party. And she asked my opinion. I thought it was brilliant. I knew that she would use her resources to bring in just so many new volunteers to that county, and that county has a lot of Democrats, has a lot of people there. And she asked the chair, and he said no, because she voted Republican in the last primary, which I know a lot of Democrats did as well. And she was told on the phone that they didn't want a Republican representing their party. And if you follow her on TikTok or Instagram, you can clearly see she's a pretty strong progressive Democrat. And we just did our own show about this at 11 o'clock today.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally disgusted by gatekeeping. I think the precinct chairs should have decided. I think the chair should have written the letter that's needed to allow her to be on, since it's very clear that she is a Democrat and holds our values. Is there any plan, if you become chair, to change the system so that it isn't so easy for people that maybe want to stay in power and don't want to have an election and lose their power? Is there anything that you would be willing to do if you win this position as chair to change the system so that we do not have so much gatekeeping?
So I think to give a little bit more background as well, our party rule on primaries used to follow state law, which has actually gotten more stringent and restricted in that it's now 2 primaries under state law. The party,
I believe that's 2-party. I believe that's if you're going to get on the ballot
for elected office.
Yeah.
The party rules always mirrored that in the past, but we never updated to 2 primaries when that happened. So I think that's an important thing to do. As a county chair, this has been a question I've been faced with at times. There have been times that I have signed off on that, and there have been times I have not. It is a case-by-case basis for me. I am also mindful of precedent. I do personally feel that if you are in certain circumstances or running for certain things, it would be important to understand how valuable it is to vote in that party, because you're going to be asking others to do the same in Indiana that may not be voting in a Democratic Party constantly. Typically, how I've handled it has been interviews with each of these candidates that are coming to me asking for certification. I think there's a lot of county chairs that we deal with people coming to us constantly, and there are people that are trying to run under the banner that are clearly not. And so having that ability is important. But I do think it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis.
My problem with that is it's one person that gets the power, and it's the person that, in this case, someone would come up against. So it's so easy for the person in power to just say, no, I want to stay in power. Why can't we let the precinct chairs vote who they think is
reorg
best?
Then that would be going through the reorg.
So why, if you were chair, wouldn't there be a way to change the rules so that the person that has the power is not the person saying no, so that it would be a more democratic approach?
So my understanding is that it was put to the central committee. It was not just the chair that made the decision in this circumstance.
Got it. Central committee meaning the 4 officers of the committee.
Yeah.
Right. So they decided they didn't
want a person with this huge audience to come in and bring in all these volunteers. It makes us look bad. We're supposed to be the big tent party. We're supposed to be the party that welcomes people. We're not as judgmental. We are not as scared of disagreeing. Mm-hmm. We watch the other party. If they don't get in line, they get kicked out. And I'm just wondering, in this example, how are we any better than the people we say we are better than? I can't see it. I don't agree with this. And if this would have been done to me, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. They could have used stuff I've done as a reason to not let me run for state house. Yeah. And Tim as well. Tim they could have had gatekeeping with him, and he wouldn't have ran for Congress, and we wouldn't have met. So we were lucky.
I needed that letter signed so that I could run for U.S. Congress.
Because you used to be an independent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you clearly, your values align with us. So we're not scared of you, thankfully. There wasn't gatekeeping down here. There could have been. Mm-hmm. I'm encouraging the people in power to fix some of this, because we're hurting in Indiana. I don't have basic health care rights here. That maybe doesn't affect your life, but it does mine. I almost died giving birth to my twins. They was triplets and one didn't make it. Thankfully, I got to decide the things about my own body and about my own children. And politicians that don't know my body parts didn't get to tell me what to do. If I would have had that pregnancy now, I might not be here. So I'm never going to stop fighting for that right. And there's a lot of women in Indiana that are very passionate because they are worried about their daughters and their granddaughters and all the women that might want to have children or might not want to. And it's very frustrating for us that this is happening, because if Corinne would have been put on this ballot and the precinct chairs could have voted, that would be democratic approach there. But she wasn't even allowed. She wasn't given a chance. And I know her very well, better than the people that said no to her. And I know what that would have done for the state of Indiana. It would have drastically helped us. So I'm just pleading right now, as a precinct chair, as a leader of Harrison County Democrats, as a co-founder of Project Next, I'm basically pleading with those of you that have power like you do, that we have got to change. We have got to lessen the gatekeeping. And from what I'm hearing from you right now is no, you think that the rule should stay. Is that correct?
I've always treated it as a case-by-case basis. I also think that if you are an elected official and a Democratic elected official, and you vote in another primary, that is something that absolutely should be considered. Or if you want to lead the Democratic Party, I think it makes sense that you have voted Democrat as well.
Well, so just to be clear, she did vote Democrat. And you might not know this, so just clear on the facts. She voted Democrat for the general election, right? She's a very much. She's more liberal than the both of us on the call, actually, and very much is. I mean, she's coining the term "bluesers," right? She's a Democrat, and has a huge following of Democrats for it. She voted on the Republican primary, like a lot of people did, to get Braun to not be running, right? That was a problem. We actually talked about that a lot when I was on the campaign of trying to get people not to do that, but people who were major donors to me, who maxed out on their donation, I know didn't vote for me in the primary because they pulled Republican tickets. And even here down in Clark County, we had the Jamie Knoll scandal. And so a lot of Democrats voted Republican primary to oust anyone that had to do with that, and successfully, actually, for a number of them. Our county council got completely turned over. So there are, there are reasonable reasons. It feels there are reasons that you may not agree with, but they are agree to disagree type reasons that could be there. So I know you can't speak for these people and what they decided necessarily, and don't want you to, or defend them, and don't want to put you on a place to defend people that you don't know all the details. You can never do that in this moment. But the greater question is, in general, what we're seeing, especially very much we see it in the Republican Party, where people are kept out from being able to be part of that party for one reason or another, people getting censured, etc. Where's the stop? If I were to say, some things that I disagreed with the Democratic Party while running for Congress, but agreed with more of the Republican Party, would I get a censure from it? Like, where's the how strong do we want to go as a party to stay about Democrats rather than necessarily about the people of Indiana? I think there's just two ways of going with the party right now, and so that's my explanation of that. I wonder if that opens up conversation at all, or any thoughts for you.
Yeah, I would say so. The majority of the precinct chairs in Allen County are appointed. I have appointed all but one person that has applied. And with that said, those that did not meet that primary history, I did talk with them, or try to. There were a bunch that I did not get a conversation with, so I couldn't move forward with them. But there were plenty where I did have that conversation and appoint. Again, there was only one person that I turned away for other reasons. But everyone else that applied would get a point. So like, I have shown a history of actually talking with people that have that and getting through that. But again, there have been candidates where I've refused to sign off because of various issues with their primary history.
And I would just say, if there are people that have major issues, like, it sounds like you're doing a good job as chair and you're really taking time, and I appreciate that. I wish more time was taken with Corinne. The problem is, it's so easy to do the gatekeeping. If somebody comes in and they wouldn't be a great chair, you just take the time to call the precinct chairs, and everybody has a discussion. Let's just open it up. That's my complaint. The fewer the people that have the power, the greater the chance to misuse the power. So, you might become chair. I'm just asking you to bring this up and to possibly change it. I want to move on to another hard question, and you're doing a really good job of being so open and honest, and I'm just so thankful you're here. So thank you. And I'm sorry, these are hard questions, but
they're to be expected.
It's stressful in Indiana. Something that really upset me, and then my friend Destiny and Corinne and Mad Voters, and basically every woman that is a Democrat that is aware of what's going on, is the issue with Greg. Is it named Abbott? Am I saying it right? Greg Abbott?
Greg Taylor.
Greg Taylor. Yep. Is the issues with Greg Taylor. Who's got the fire?
That would be me.
That's funny. Okay, so Greg Taylor is a state senator in Indiana. in the Indianapolis area, I think.
Yes.
And which is a very heavily Democrat area. So we could have competition there and win as Democrat. We could primary people. And recently it has come to light that allegedly there have been, there have been many women that have come forward that said allegedly he used his power and his position to sexually assault women that worked under him that did not have the power. And what made me really sick was this story has come out. People knew about it. And the Democrats, the Democrats in office in Indiana elected him Senate Minority Leader. After this knowledge is coming out and people are hearing about it, okay, and then more stories came out. Corinne and I did an episode about it, and I got some anonymous tips from things too. And that day or the next day, they took, he's not minority leader anymore. Shelley Yoder is, which she would have been I just don't understand why she wasn't elected in the first place. She doesn't have all these skeletons in her closet of harming people that work under her. And Destiny Wells talked about it on our episode yesterday of mental fitness. She said a lot of Democratic state parties have an ethics committee already set up in place so that when things like this happen, there's a system, to do things so that maybe we don't elect this person as minority leader. But we don't have one here. So she has said she wants to do that. She wants to set that up. And she also publicly said she supports the women. And I do too. The women that are saying were assaulted. If you win as chair, I hope you know that is something we're discussing over. And I'd like to know your plans for stopping this so that this doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah. So after the first story came out last fall, was that right after the election?
I don't know.
Somewhere right around there. At State Party, I do serve on the rules committee there. We did put in place, or we recommended to the SCC, the State Central Committee, a code of conduct and an ethics committee creation and the process for that and the rules, with the understanding that it's not a fully finished product, what was recommended, and we'll have to come back to it. That is something I did vote for in the rules committee. With that said, I think there's a few things that I do want to make clear to everyone that is listening, what the state party is and is not capable of doing in this kind of scenario. The first is we do not have any bearing when it comes to leadership elections with the independent caucuses. We also are not able under state law to remove anyone from elected office, or depending on the time of year, are we able to remove someone from the ballot. So that's some restrictions. Now, what we are capable of doing is what we did recommend in that code of conduct and the ethics committee change, in that upon an investigation, the ethics committee would turn over a recommendation to the state chair and the state central committee that if the allegations were found to be true, then they could recommend censure. It could be temporary or permanent ban from party activities and a suspension of access to party tools and resources. That's what the party is capable of doing directly. So that would, if depending on the recommendation and the investigation, result in what the party can do in blocking some of the access to things, which makes it harder to be an elected official and a Democratic elected official. But the ultimate responsibility does fall on that individual caucus or the individual taking it outside of a state house or state senate, the city, the county, whatever their process might be. So that's what the party itself is capable of under the laws and rules regarding all of this. With that particular situation, if those allegations were brought, I would support that going through the ethics committee for an investigation to be turned over to the SCC with a recommendation upon the conclusion of that.
Just to let you know, since I'm the only woman in this conversation, reading emails from the Indiana State Democratic Party praising this person, Greg Taylor, for his work really hurt me personally as a woman. I think there could have been some better discussion around, are we protecting our most vulnerable people here? And if something like this were to happen and you were chair, I would highly encourage not praising the person that there's multiple allegations of abuse towards a group of people. We're Democrats. We're supposed to be supporting everyone. We're supposed to be on the side of good. And I know we are, but we could be doing better. And in 2025, with social media, with all of these powerful, wonderful Indiana Democrat social media stars we have, like Corinne Strait, we're not going to keep quiet about it. So the old days when you could keep things hushed up and very few knew about it, that's just not realistic anymore. Right. Again, I don't have healthcare rights here. Right. I'm pretty passionate. I'm not going to stop shining a light on things when I see it, because we have to save Indiana. We have to. There's no other option. So just to let those people know that are in power, think about the victims. Think about, especially if you win and you're the only male out of the four, I really want you to maybe talk to some women, maybe talk to some abuse survivors before praising people, you know?
Yeah, I have had to conduct these kind of investigations before, unfortunately. I've worked with, for one or two of them, with Ann Delaney, who's a former deputy prosecutor in Marion County, working on sex crimes. She was also the executive director of the Julian Center supporting domestic abuse victims. So we have gone through that. I've got a great running mate with Melissa Moorhead-Moore out of Evansville that came through Hoosier Women Forward. That's going to be a good part of that and a major part of those conversations as well.
And I appreciate you really taking it seriously and really trying and being willing to work on this, because it's not just the Indiana State Democratic Party that needs to change. This is a hard topic. Sexual assault's really hard to prove.
Yes.
And it's messy. It's not black and white. So I'm thankful that people at the top are willing to continue to work on it. Because of this recent example, it clearly shows we need to keep working. It's not perfect. And then, like Tim and I had to, we're going to have this discussion as we grow, Tim. We're going to have to make sure we put things in place to protect when we start hiring more people. We're going to have to make sure that we are doing the right things and that we're willing to change quickly when a need arises that we didn't think of. We're not going to think of everything. So we're going to have to change. So it's a complex subject, and I'm just thankful that you're willing to talk about it. And my big hard questions are over with. And I thank you, Tim, for letting me go first. You can go next and tell us, let's hear your stuff.
Well, yeah, I just want to thank both of you on that before we move on, because tough conversation, and it's really what we're trying to model here with this program. And we've had them with Republicans, libertarians, people who identify as independents. We're trying to bring people from all different thought processes to have these conversations in a way that's still respectful and also vulnerable. Like Sarah, just the vulnerability of you talking about your triplets, that now you have twins. I mean, it's so hard. And, we're talking about sexual assault. We're talking about issues that are so hard that we just can't turn away from. And so, Derek, thank you for going on it when emotions are high and still being able to be level-headed. So I really appreciate it. I think related to this other question came up when we did the forum that you weren't on around kind of big tent versus go deep in terms of the party. Where do we want to go, as well as what's the next step? Are we trying to create something where we have a big, broad group of people that we're trying to move to the right or move into a different direction? Or are we trying to, double down on the people that are so passionate about the Democratic Party right now and get them to, commit even more? And in particular, we talked about rural communities. And so Sarah and I both live in rural communities. I live on a farm right here in New Washington. And a lot of our colleagues and the people I live around, even if they were Democrat or even if they identify as Democrat, feel like Democratic Party is no longer representing them or abandon them. You hear these things, and whether you agree with that or not, that's how they feel. So it's hard to disagree with a feeling. So yeah, there's a lot wrapped up into that question. So I'd love to have a discussion with you. First of all, wide versus deep. What's the next step here?
I think it's going to be a bit of both. It's going to have to be. We've got turnout issues in the state with our Democratic base. 385,000 Hoosier Democrats did not vote last year. And that's a lot. So we've definitely have to dive in and work with our base, making sure we're turning those people out. However, at the same time, there are still a lot of disaffected Republicans. There are also Democrats in our rural communities that are feeling left behind as well. And we need to make sure we're getting out to them. So I do believe it's going to be a bit of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was a member of now Cattlemen's Association. My in-laws are all cattlemen, and I've started to learn and help out a little bit there. And so I started to learn even more by being members of them. I went to the annual meeting this year, just a week ago. And, not many Democrats in that room right now. But 20 years ago, it was filled with Democrats, right? 20 years ago, it was filled with Democrats. And those people in the room are pretty much the same people, right? There's new or younger people, yes, but there's change. But the core is, it's the same people, same families, even especially. Yeah. And so, get asked the question, and it's such an interesting question of like, why are you a Democrat? And wondering if you could answer that for yourself, or as well as like, what should I tell someone when they ask that?
So I am a Democrat. Originally, it's because of organized labor. Both my dad and grandpa were union members. My grandpa was a retired UAW. So that was my first exposure. And then my mom has worked as a paralegal for a criminal defense attorney since I was in middle school. And so I got an experience of seeing what it's really like. And a lot of these people aren't out there trying to do bad. They're trying to get through life, and they're just running into some problems. And so making sure that we're treating them with respect and getting them solutions instead of just constantly incarcerating them and punishing them was kind of my early exposure. Since then, it has kind of emerged. Having worked in campaigns, you tend to care a lot about voting rights. Mm-hmm. And Democrats are obviously the ones that are trying to expand voting rights while Republicans are restricting them. And so those are probably the three big reasons of why I became a Democrat. Everything else, like most Democrats, I agree with probably about 90% of our platform. But mm-hmm. those were the big three that got me here.
Got it. And so when someone, from Clark County Cattlemen's Associations says to me, why are you a Democrat again? What should I draw on for that answer? I could draw on my personal experiences, but, do I defend the Democratic Party? Do I, what would you give me for advice there?
I think the bigger thing is that Democrats, we're looking for fairness and opportunity and making sure that we're setting up our following generations for success. We're there to support our families, and that means everyone. We're there to make sure that you have a successful life, a successful career, whatever that may be, whether it is farming, whether it is as a lawyer, whether it is a doctor, or as an assessor, though most people may disagree with that. But making sure that everyone has that opportunity. We want you to enjoy your life, be successful, but at the same time, we want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, you talked about get out the vote, and, are we wide versus deep? Are we going to knock on these doors over the next, 4 years and encourage that are out here in the rural areas and have more of an effort for that? Or is it concentrate on the doors in, cities and Indy? I'd like to say both, but like, if you had $1, how much of that dollar goes to knocking on those doors in Indies and cities, and how much of that gets it to the gas that's needed to get around in the rural areas?
I think it depends. It depends on the work that's being done already. And so I tell candidates, like, I want you to do the work. I want you to do it early. If you come to me in October and you haven't knocked a door, don't expect the party to be able to do anything because you haven't given us any voters that are supporting you. You haven't built your volunteer base. So encouraging counties to work with their candidates, encouraging candidates to get started early, and then seeing where those go, and kind of investing throughout the year and making some changes throughout the year. One of the big things, I think my Senate race is a big example of this. When I ran for Senate, I was number 18 on the priority list out of the 25 that year.
Okay.
Very low down the totem pole on what they cared about. By the end of that, I ended up in the 3rd position on their priorities. So they started shifting money and resources to me because we did put in the work. Mm-hmm. By the end of that campaign, we had done over 22,000 doors for a state Senate race. But it's because I had put in the effort and the time in the beginning. And so I think we need to work with our counties to make sure that they understand, and our candidates, that like, you have to start early. You have to do these doors. If you're putting in the work, we absolutely want to be there for you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I asked this question of Jennifer when she was on the kind of follow-up, which had to do with my own race, and I think I touched on it with the phone with you a little bit, which is so rural candidates, not just in Indiana, but in many other red states, but we'll focus on Indiana. Rural candidates for Congress have this funny limbo going on where the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional, what is it said work?
Campaign Committee.
Campaign Committee. Thank you so much. We like to, all of our acronyms, we like to spell out sometimes. You say DCCC, so much, I forget what it means. So the DCCC is not going to support a race in red Indiana rural race that, lost by 30 points the last time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a terrible idea. I think you're just abandoning. We talked about, rural voters feeling abandoned. They literally, it's proof of the pudding.
How are you ever supposed to win? How are you ever supposed to grow and get there?
Right? And so you don't have that support. Okay, we don't have that support. So you look to the state. But the state has more of a mission that is about supporting statewide candidates, right? About governor, about Attorney General, Secretary of State, as well as State House, and trying to flip that. So you're stuck in this place where, the state really isn't supporting you with resources. DCCC isn't, so it's all on you. And you got to think of unique ways to do that. And when I say you, I mean you, your team, right, your supporters, the local counties can help in some ways. And so it's just this limbo. And I guess...
I think it causes our candidates down here that are running for Congress to just run once, it's a big deal that you are working so hard, Tim, to try to run again. It takes a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of wait times. You took off work to run for a year for Congress. How can we be asking this of regular people when we're not supporting them financially? There just aren't enough Tim Pecks in the world or in the country, Yeah.
And is it this, it's explicitly not the responsibility of the Senate, of the state party, right? It's the responsibility of DCCC, but they're not doing it. So should the state step up? Should they not? Should it be a different way? And, it's a hard question, but your thoughts.
I don't actually think it's that hard of a question. So both with Allen County Democratic Party and with the Indiana Young Democrats, we did not give direct contributions to candidates. That's not how we viewed things. But what we did do is we paid for things that they could all use. We paid for the burner phones. We paid for space. We paid for these other things that was more of an economy of scale type thing. And that was our way of supporting those candidates. Our GOTV program, where we take on a lot of the aspects of getting out the vote while allowing the candidates to continue to go find more voters and bringing more voters into the system. I think that's what the parties can do, whatever level it may be in this state. And I think that is a valuable part of what they should be doing to help candidates that may not be those targeted by DTRIF or others, but that's where we can kind of step in and provide some of those services and pay for those services so that you don't have to, which takes some of that load off of your plate in terms of financial planning and things like that.
Yes, I like this. I mean, you talked about how you were talking about a resource library, what did you call it? A speakers bureau.
Yeah.
other things, these centralized ways of then distributing these resources to others. It sounds like you're saying you may have thought of some of that or seen some of that work as Allen County chair and trying to bring that to the State House as a larger scale. And
yeah, I like that too. Whenever I ran for county council, and then this election I ran for State House in District 70, and when I got on the ballot very late in July.
Oof, that's tough.
Yeah, I had to have a lot of help. I had to call Tim, get him helping me, and I had no idea what to do. I mean, I had some knowledge from county council, but this is state, not county, so it was very different. And I'm so thankful that my friend Kent Yeager, who is our treasurer of Harrison County Dems, was a member of the Indiana Rural Summit. And he connected me to Michelle Higgs, who was one of the founders, and she welcomed me in. And then it was this group of State House candidates in this area. And then I went to a training like a week or two after. I think it was a couple days after I joined Indiana Rural Summit. I drive up to Bloomington and I had this great training. And then I kind of knew what to do. And then we had this text message of these support of people running for State House in rural areas. And so we would text each other a question and one of us knew it, we'd answer it. The Indiana Rural Summit is great. Do you have any plans to support organizations like that that are just directly helping brand new candidates like I was, that I didn't have a clue of what to do. And it really gave me a protective blanket of safety there.
Yeah, so the Rural Summit never really made it up to my neck of the woods. So not as familiar with it, though I have seen a little bit about it. And I did talk with Kent a little bit this week about it.
Oh, neat.
So there, and I know the value in that because when I ran, I was endorsed by Run for Something, and they had that group chat feature with your endorsed running that were running at the same time. So we had that same feature. It was so helpful. I would love to see more of that. I'd love to see more groups focusing on that, more of the party providing the training and connections. One of the things from that state Senate race I managed in 2012 is that office was Tim Delaney's campaign that I was managing. It was Ed Delaney's campaign that another guy was managing, and then Christina Hale's campaign that another guy was managing. We all had different skill sets, and we were all fresh to this. That was our first campaigns that we were working. We ended up working on all three races together because it benefited us, it benefited the candidates, and it was super helpful. So I do like to encourage that where possible.
Yeah, I recommend that. Tim and I worked a lot together, and that's what helped lead to this because we got to know each other. I think that's a great tip. Working with the other candidates that are in the same area, share all of your knowledge, do your things together. That's a good thing I recommend. My other question I have is about communication. What would be your plans for communicating, for really opening up what your decision-making process is to us regular Democrats in Indiana? How do you feel about using social media? How do you feel about emailing? You're doing this live with us, so that's great. Yeah. How would you feel about coming on Project Next when you have something to let us know about the Indiana State Democratic Party? What are your thoughts on using social media to get the word out about your plans for Indiana democracy?
I think we have to go everywhere and be on everything. Even some of the social media platforms that I know a lot in our party. Sorry, next to a fire station.
That's funny.
But even some of the platforms where it's gotten a little bit far right, I think we still need to be there and we still need to be visible to.
I agree. Yeah.
But it also does mean opening up a few other things. The platform hearing process is not the most open in terms of there's 3 in-person locations and 1 Zoom. It is hard for one corner of the state to go to the other side and either the north or south for that. So that's important. One of the things that I've already started talking about with some of the people helping me in this race is kicking off right after reorg with basically a statewide tour around. Everyone acknowledges that our brand is not the strongest right now. Making sure that we're going around and getting feedback on that and kind of bringing that all together. I do not believe it is the chair's job to set or dictate what the message is. It's our job to coalesce it and push it in support of our candidates and support of our electeds. That doesn't mean we can't advise on what's going to be strong or not strong, but I do think it's important to get around to the different parts of the state to hear from the electeds, the candidates, and all the other various stakeholders on what that message should be.
I like that a lot. Tim and I both said this multiple times. Running as a Democrat, we get to run as ourselves. And I don't think I would have ran for state house. Well, I know I wouldn't have if people from the top were saying you can only talk about these issues.
Yeah.
I never got that one time. I got to be me, and I'm on the right side of history, and I got to speak about what I was most passionate about, which is saving public education and getting women's healthcare rights back. I'm also really concerned about the energy bill problem that we have, that we pass bills so let our energy companies be in charge of our prices instead of the government. So I focused on those three issues mostly, and nobody told me to change my position. And I highly recommend continuing that. Let people be who they are. We're on the right side. Yeah.
Touching on that a little bit more, it is important that we build a message that can work statewide, but it's also important to acknowledge that what works in Bloomington may not work in New Albany, may not work in Carmel or Fort Wayne. Like, there are differences that we need to keep in mind as we go through these things. And as we look at candidates for various offices, I think it's more important to find someone who is connected to their community, who is willing to put in the work, and who can speak passionately about what it is that they want to speak about. Now, we can give guidance on how to phrase things to make it more effective for you, but I do think that's important.
Yeah. We lost Sarah for a moment here. Yeah, that's all right. So, Sarah talked about, and thank you for that. One of my, when people ask me why I'm a Democrat, recently my answer has been, which is from self-reflection, similar to what Sarah's saying, is that it allowed me to be who I want to be and who I am, right? In order to bring who I am to the constituents that need that, right? And so don't try to change who you are and what you bring to the table, what you think, even if it's not completely aligned to what the national party is saying, or, as you said, various groups of Democrats. So that big tent in that way is wonderful. One thing that Sarah's, she's back, but passionate about, and we all are, is our schools. And school board has been, across the country, become a political fight, right? Yeah. And in Indiana, it's probably going to become an actual political position. Right now, it's not. We've seen in our area, especially Harrison County, school board being run as a political fight by the Republicans, but not by the Democrats, right? Like, they haven't been bringing the political side to it, because the quoted reason is usually that it's around, we're thinking about kids and we're thinking about what's needed for kids and families, not about politics, right? But they're in a fight that they're not fighting. And so try to give both sides of that. Like, what's your thought about, should this be a political game? Should the Democrats enter into that political game? Is that going to be an expanded role of the state chair, to also think about not just all of the positions that we have currently, but also school board, right? Is school board part of the mission here?
So I think some of that answer is going to depend on what happens in the legislature this year, on whether they actually turn it into a partisan race. It's been blocked before and stopped before. But specifically here in Allen County, there are 4 school districts in Allen County. 2 of them have not had any of these kind of fights at all, and 2 have. Mm-hmm. And because they are nonpartisan, some of the tools we have are blocked from going to those candidates in support of them, if they align with our views. We can recommend some other stuff, but that doesn't mean that Democrats haven't formed some groups to fight back here with Northwest Allen or Southwest Allen schools. They have been successful on some and not successful on others. It's usually a mixed bag every year. So if it does become partisan, we absolutely have to, and I mean have to, start including that in our process of looking at candidates and whatnot. Now, that said, we already kind of do. How many school board members run for higher office? City council, county council, state rep, or even higher. Sure. We held a caucus for 6th District City Council here in Fort Wayne last year, and it was a school board member from Fort Wayne Community Schools that won that. So it is a valuable recruiting place for us already as a party, and we need to keep looking at that.
Interesting. Well, yeah. So, any last
Sorry,
words?
I want to say one more thing about the school board.
Oh,
So my
please.
biggest problem with it, if it happens, I hope that we constantly fight to change it, is once it becomes partisan, whoever is chair of the county party will get to decide whether they want to allow certain people on to run for school board. So you're going to pick the person that fits their agenda. So I tried to help two Republicans. Well, one's a Republican/Libertarian that were the best candidates for my kids' schools at North Harrison. I tried to help them, and they wouldn't have even been allowed to run because the person that's the county Republican chair here would have not let them because they wanted other people because they were going with their agenda of
Right.
destroying the public schools here. So that's my big issue. It just gets more gatekeeping. And what if there's a parent that just cares about their kid's school and that's why they're running and they're not all into politics? I
Yeah.
mean, that's how I would prefer it. I wish politics weren't in our schools, but they are, so that's
And
my
that's
biggest
exactly
issue.
why it shouldn't be turned into partisan races.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad that you see that because not everybody does. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party in Indiana that think it's a great thing because they would have more control over it. And I'm like,
it hurts more than it helps. There are Democrats in some of these areas where there are no Democrats elected, but they're elected to school board.
Yeah.
Right. And then I have one more, Tim, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please.
You want to ask
Please.
one
Go
more? Okay,
for it.
thanks. I am very conflicted. This week has been a rough week for me personally, and Tim's been a great friend to me just with pressure. I know a lot of people that have some power in Indiana democracy and the leadership. And then I'm friends with hundreds of people that I met a lot online and a lot when I was campaigning, a lot of very passionate Democrats. And there seems to be a communication issue. The ones that are on social media that are doing TikToks and things, they're very passionate. And sometimes that passion can seem rude when they communicate to leadership. And I encourage leadership to not take it personally because you always have to remember we don't have our rights. Women don't have our rights here in Indiana of healthcare, and our children, schools, if we send our kids to public, which I send my 3 kids to public, our schools are being attacked. And then there's other issues. If you're in the Pride community, you're being attacked in Indiana. And then there's lots of other things. We are upset and we're sort of traumatized. And I'm wondering if you're willing to have that hard discussion with the people that have so much power over Indiana Democrats, opening up communication with us and maybe being as healthy as possible there. Like, I want to know what would be your approach, because right now there's a lot of gatekeeping and there's a lot of just ignore them. Oh, they said this mean thing to me, I'm never talking to them again. There's a lot of that going on that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I want to know, how are you going to handle this? Because it's delicate and it's hard, and I am in it as well. And I have just chosen to love these people no matter what, even if they yell at other people that I'm friends with. I'm going to love them anyway. So I just wonder, what are you going to do?
So I think that tour we were talking about a little bit earlier is the start of that process, getting out and bringing them into the conversation, bringing in all the various groups into the conversation to see what we can all agree on. I think it is also important to explain the party's setup and the process as well. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what that is. Other than state chair, every other chair at the county or district level and every other party office, it's all volunteer. Many of these people have jobs so it is hard for them to kind of keep up. Sitting in on the emerging leaders panel, this is kind of a similar question to what we get asked of, like, hey, I've not heard from this county chair or this person. And it's like, you got to keep trying with us sometimes. Like, we're dealing with 50 different fires at once, and we've got our own work life, we've got our own family life, and it is hard sometimes to keep up with it. It'd be hard for anyone. So from our side as chairs, it's important that everyone realizes that, like, hey, this isn't our full-time thing. Like, it can't be. There's not the pay for it, which can lead to frustrations, which then turns back, and then that makes some people dig in. So it's also like, we've got to be willing to understand that as well.
I totally agree with you, because I'm on the leadership team at Harrison County Democrats, and we got 10 new people at our last meeting. We had 14 at the meeting before, and then we had 28 with 10 new people we've never met before or hadn't seen in years. And they were like, what are we doing right now? We want to go do this protest and we want to organize this thing and we want to do, what are you doing now? And you can see their stress and anxiety of national and state politics affecting their lives. And so for the next meeting, I'm going to try to be more prepared, and I'm going to have a list of different organizations. They can work with us, but here's what we do. And we're all unpaid and we're all busy. And then here's Mad Voters. You could go work for them. Here's, if you're worried about women's rights, there's a coalition for that. You know, so I'm going to do a better job as on the leadership team of having an organized list to hand out to people and maybe talking to the new ones individually and seeing what are they most passionate about. Where can we find them a fit? Because we can't immediately at Harrison County Democrats just do everything. So I get that. And education just seems to be so important. Most people don't fully know. I don't understand everything of how things are ran.
Can't tell you how many breakfast meetings we've had, like our monthly breakfast meeting, where I get asked, well, why aren't you talking about this federal issue or this federal issue? And I'm like, we're a county party and we've got our council candidates speaking. We have nothing to do with Social Security.
But they want to talk about it. A lot of the new people do. Yeah, we get that too. Yeah.
So it does make it hard to bring some people in, and until we can work out that here's what we're actually able to do and what our responsibilities are.
So, you know, a message for people who are losing their jobs right now, federal workers, for people, you know, who are worried about inflation, and that's not, you know, eggs aren't going away right now. People who are scared, who might not be political, who otherwise might become politically charged during this time of, you know, especially national politics, pushing people to have to look politics in the face if they're going to lose their job or not be able to afford their next meal. So, you know, there is a lot of potentially new activated voters. Question is, how do we reach those people today, or do we wait for 2 years from now when the election's happening, or like, and you know, how do we get to them? How do we find them and make sure that they know that they have a friend on their side?
So I think it should start immediately after reorg. Like, this is where we need to be with our counties and our precinct chairs, needing to be talking with voters now. It means getting candidates, and I don't know what it is in your counties, but we've already got some candidates lining up for 2026 that, while they've not announced, they're getting their ducks in a row. So that's an important start, because it is a lot easier for a party to coalesce behind a candidate and drive the message, drive the efforts there, because people are going to turn out for candidates. They're not turning out repeatedly for a party. They're turning out for the candidates. Our job is to set those candidates up. And so I think that's something else to keep in mind. We do need to be out knocking those doors. This is a perfect year for voter registration efforts. This is a perfect year to put in place and start thinking those long-term and putting the infrastructure into place in a lot of these counties. And with campaigns to make sure that they are reaching out to these voters, because there are a lot of disaffected voters, whether it is because of the layoffs, whether it is because of the numerous other things that Trump or Braun are doing, that are going to give us opportunities. We need to be touching each and every one of those voters as much as we can.
You know, and so, you know, here in District 9, we have 18 counties. Some of them are very different than others, right? We have Monroe County, where Bloomington is, and we have New Albany, and we have Clark, where Jeffersonville is. But we also, you know, have Franklin County, where Batesville is, and Lawrence, Dearborn, where Lawrenceburg is, and definitely Lawrence County, where Bedford is, right? These are cities, these are very different cities from one another. And it still it gets me to think, you know, with all of this, you have to think, how are we going to find those people who are becoming politically activated because they've been affected by either, you know, the administration at the federal or state level in Bedford, where there's barely any Democrats, versus leaning into Bloomington, right, and getting people out to the polls. I know we have to do both, and I guess, is there a way, you know, what is the thing that we should be focusing on that helps do both at the same time? rather than the kind of having two different programs at once? Or does it have to be two different programs?
I don't think it has to be two different programs. If you're running a field effort, it's no different wherever you are. Like, the targeting in VAN is going to be a little bit different. And VAN is an incredibly powerful tool. And I know there are a ton of people frustrated with VAN. But the thing to remember is VAN's only as good as the data you put in.
Can you tell people what VAN is for people that don't know?
Yeah.
Voter Action? I don't know what his name is.
Voter Activation Network, or I don't know. Vote Builder. It's our voter file, our database where we track every registered voter. We put in our own data. So this is where we track answers to survey questions, activist codes like, are you a volunteer for this candidate? Do you want a yard sign? How supportive are you? And a whole host of things. It's only as powerful as what we put in, though. And I cannot think of that any clearer than some of the races I've worked in. Like, I have worked in Kokomo, and when we started, the data was not great. We were getting like a 12% contact rate on the phones. But because we did so much effort, by the end of that, we were getting 30% because we had cleaned out all the bad data. Same in Fort Wayne. And you can tell where we've had a lot of campaigns that work and where they don't, just based on how good the data is.
When I used it, when I ran for county council, I did not use it when I ran for state house. It was a lot of people that their houses that said they were Democrat, and they very clearly were not. They were mad when I showed up, and I tried to talk to them, and they were just like, "Get away from me." So I would enter that in there. But yes, it is getting better. Yeah. But
were you looking at likely party, or were you looking at scores?
I was looking at like whether it would say highly Democrat, maybe leaning
in Indiana.
I would go and it'd be like highly Democrat, and I'd go and they'd be like, no. So I saw some inaccuracies. I also know that the Republicans use like their own, and they have a lot more money, and theirs is better than ours because they have just so much more money than us, which is frustrating, but I get it.
Yeah. One thing I always tell all my candidates and anyone I work with, don't use likely party. It has not been updated since 2012.
Oh, that helps. Yeah.
We use a scoring system, which is a little bit more technical, but it's more accurate. Still not 100%, but it does get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It does get closer. And, my scores, because I, and people on this show know this very much, I made sure to not vote in primaries in the past. I was very much, that's where I was in the distant and not too far distant past. I would even drive to the primary to tell myself, yes, I would have done this if I to prove it I'm not just lazy. And then, especially the last 10 years, as things have developed in terms of our national politics, things have changed quite radically. And I started to align much more with the Democratic Party, and here I am. And that's my story. So my score is quite low, or was quite low. Now it's high, but it was quite low in VAN, which is interesting.
And I think that's an important point to bring up. People change.
My door.
Yeah.
Yep.
People change, especially when your rights are being taken away. Yep. It is not so much about being Democrat or Republican. It's, are you on the right side of history right now? And if we keep only focusing on just get the Democrats and not the people that are upset about their rights, we're going to lose a whole bunch of people. So we really need to be big tent, loving and accepting. And I'm constantly, just about every day, pleading with my big Democrats that think Republicans are evil. I'm friends with so many Republicans here, not necessarily the ones in power, but the regular voting Republicans are great people. And when I say that, they look at me like I'm nuts. And it's like, no, their media is different than ours. They're not getting the same media as us. They think they're on the right side. We have to show them the truth in a loving, empathetic way. And we can't keep yelling at them. That is a big reason why I think we might have lost nationally, is the yelling at the other side. We've got to stop it. We have to unite. That's what we're doing at Project Next. Uniting people for the common good of humankind. And we're on the right side. So we should be doing better. That, we're clearly supporting human rights and letting people be free, wanting people to have freedoms. But the people still don't know that. There's tons and tons of Republicans that think we're evil. So we have to do a better job with messaging on, and we have to do a better job with the Democrats that are voting with us,
I think one of the things you just said that is so true that I think we need to remind our own volunteers of is we can't just have you talking to the people you agree with. That does not win us elections. Like, you also, as volunteers, need to be willing to go talk to people that you don't know that
And that's
may not
hard.
agree with you 100%. And it is hard. But like, the other thing is, we're all Hoosiers. There's the thing about Midwest nice. You go knock on their door, they're typically going to be nice to you at their door. And I think that is important to remember. It is definitely a challenge for volunteers to get them there. It does take some time to get them to that point, but it is incredibly important if we're to win. And that's
if you think about all the fear that they're being dumped on a daily basis with the left-wing media and the right-wing media just telling us to fear our neighbors, that they're terrifying, I understand why they're scared. And so when we just keep pumping this out at Project Next, most of our neighbors are wonderful people, even if they vote differently. It's hard to hear, because think of the years of misinformation, of the fear-based media that has just been dumped on them. It's hard. We have to keep saying it, and sometimes the strong Democrat leaders don't want to say it because they've got this base driving them that is saying those people are terrible, and they don't want to get up and say, no, they're not. So it's something that we could work on at the top of the party in Indiana.
Well, at the local level, Republicans and Democrats have to work together if they're in office. I'm the only elected Democrat in county government.
Wow.
And so, like, you have to get along. And I tremendously respect my other county elected officials.
They're not all evil, are you saying?
They're there to do their job. Like, the countywides, like, we're there to administer and perform the duties of the job. There's not politics there. There's not everything. We're there to make sure that your taxes are fair, your assessed value is fair, and we're providing the services. That's what we're doing. And I think that is a challenge for people to remember, that that's what this is.
Yeah, national has just come in so hard and taken over everything, and we need people to say, don't look at national, look at local. And that's really hard right now to do, but I try to do that a lot. I like that you see that and that you're involved in local government. We can get off here. We went on a long time.
Sorry to pick it local, Tim.
I really appreciate you being so open and honest with us and answering really hard questions. That means a lot to me personally. I feel better.
It was very brave. It was very brave performance here. I know performance isn't a very brave showing here. You know, I think you got real hard questions in the beginning. There's you know, those questions are coming from a place of genuine interest and genuine wanting the party to be a better version of itself, but Indiana to be a better version of herself, and, you know, to have our neighbors be respected. So you answered it truthfully and honestly, and just thank you.
And whatever you do in the future, whether you win this state chair or you do something else, you have a welcome audience here. Hopefully you'll continue to be open and honest, and you can use our platform. So let us know, stay in touch. How can people follow what you're doing? Are you on Facebook? What's the best way to find out your platform for
DerekCamp.com? Has a pretty good layout of my platform, as well as a bit of a bio about me and my running mate, Melissa Moorhead-Moore.
Great. And that's who would you want for vice?
Yes, that's who her and I are running together.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I need to know about other people's vice, Tim. I don't know at all. Do you?
I haven't heard anyone be as definitive as Derek has just been.
Yeah,
it's a little easier for me as the only man for chair. That means my vice chair has to be a woman.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Yeah. So thanks for telling us that, because I don't know anything about the other candidates' vice. So, thank you so much, and please like, share, subscribe. If the better we grow, the more people that watch us, the better the chance we can help Indiana and all red rural places that want to climb out of this extremist government that we're stuck under. Yeah. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. Please text us to a friend. We are growing a lot, right, Tim? We're growing pretty fast.
As of last week, we were at 250,000 views. And
nice.
This week we're probably, I don't know the exact number. I don't want to quote it, but it's probably half more of that. So 50% more of that at this point. So it's growing fast.
6 shows in 4 days is our record.
Good for you.
I'm going to take a break over the weekend and just promote the shows we did, because I haven't had time to do that. But I'm proud of us. Tim Peck, you did 7 shows. There's 1 show I wasn't in. So Yeah. 7 shows we pumped out in 4 days, and I was in 6 of them, and you were in, I don't know how many, 5 or something. So what a week, huh?
Yeah, it's been a week. It's been good.
Yeah, and you rest up from giving blood. Thanks for doing that. We're actually talking on our leadership text right now for Harrison County. We want to host a blood drive with American Red Cross, so we're trying to get that figured out if we can do it. So thanks for doing that, and let's just keep doing this good work and save Indiana. You know, we all work together and clean up our issues and just keep fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was good meeting both of you.
Nice. Wonderful to meet you too. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. And just have the best weekend ever.